Hey, hey, hey. Hello to everybody.
Hello.
Let me fade the music out. We are live right now with Abel Rodriguez on the Dialogue Internet Radio Network. And I'm very happy to announce that I'm back into the podcasting game. And what a way to start this whole situation than talking about things that are going on at the University of Texas at El Paso. I have two gentlemen with me to talk about what's going on. First, we introduce retired UTEP professor Oscar Martinez. Good evening, Dr. Martinez. How are you doing today?
Muy bien. Buenas noches.
Buenas noches. Y también tenemos a Aldo Mena, who is a freelance writer and very well knowledgeable of things of the great Southwest El Paso, especially in the Condado del Paso. Good evening to you guys. Thanks for being on Dialogue here with Abel Rodriguez. I am Abel Rodriguez. People remember me from talk radio, and I'm very happy to be on again and start talking about things that are important. When you get older, you wonder why you didn't get more involved when you were younger. but now I'm younger, and I'm very excited to be able to talk about this. So why don't we just start with Dr. Martinez? So you could tell us, you wrote a paper piece on something very interesting, and this is all about leadership, talking about the leadership at the universities. We're very blessed to have the University of Texas at El Paso, who has educated many, many El Pasoans in this area throughout its great history, a lot of Latinos especially. We also have a wonderful community college system run by a great president over there, Dr. I forget his name, Dr.
Cerato or
Serata. There you go. Thanks for
Serata.
jumping in on that.
Yeah,
A
no
great
problem.
guy, know him personally. And now, so Dr. Martinez, explain about your paper that you wrote about leadership in general, as you've seen it with all your experience as a college professor, and why you felt the need to bring out the issues that you have.
Yeah, this is an op-ed that appeared in El Paso News, I guess, a couple of weeks ago, and it focuses on the leadership situation at UTEP. Basically, what we're asking in this op-ed, and I should say, excuse me, I should say that I'm only one of 5 people on a committee that we call the Committee on Mexican American Leadership at UTEP. And our objective has been to create the conditions for a Mexican American president to be established or to be named to the UTEP presidency. Anyway, I discuss details of what the committee would like to see, and then basically what we're encouraging Heather Wilson to consider leaving the UTEP presidency next year, 2025. In 2025, she will have been president of UTEP for 6 years, and 6 years is exactly the average, the usual, the standard term in office of presidents of universities across the United States. So the op-ed makes the case for why this should happen. UTEP has never had a Mexican-American president. It's been in existence since 1913. So for over a century, the Mexican-American educators who have applied for the UTEP presidency have not, in our opinion, have not been taken seriously. And so only Anglo American um, applicants have occupied that position. And that is extremely unfair, profoundly unfair. UTEP was desegregated as an institution in 1955. And at that point, they began to allow African American students to become students at the university. But the way I see it, the office of the president has not been desegregated. It's still segregated because only members of one particular group have been tapped to occupy that position. And over 80% of the students at UTEP are Mexican Americans. And the same thing can be said for El Paso. Over 80% of the population in El Paso is Mexican American, and it just doesn't make sense. It's so obvious that this is not a good situation, and the time is overdue to install a Mexican American president at that university. That's what our initiative is about. And I should mention the members of the committee. Aldo Mena, who's with us, is a member. Jose Rodriguez, who is an ex Texas senator
Yes, correct.
member. Carmen Rodriguez is also a member. And Alicia de Jong Davis, who's a gerontologist in the city, is also a member.
Well, I will tell you that I am a very fortunate graduate of 1981, way back when, and I owe the university the knowledge that it gave me in my career path, involved in radio and television since I was 17, even before getting over there. But because of what I learned, was able to, immediately get a job. So as a university, serving the Latino community, Hispanic, Chicano community, uh, many very well educated people have come out of that university. And that's kind of like, you would think that the leadership at the top, especially at the presidency, would have at least had one of us in the last so many years. Yeah, they love the success. I mean, Dr. Natalicio, I mean, she left a heck of a footprint. I mean, as far as success, a lot of people would argue about graduation rates and things like that. But the point is that the bulk of the people that would go to UTEP would come out with some sort of degree, and I'm one of them. And I led a wonderful career. I'm lucky once again because of knowing everything that I know how to set these podcast stuff. I don't have some little teenager or cousin or something that is hooking me up. I mean, I hook all this stuff up and then I jump in the chair. I go back to Paul Strelzin, and the way his leadership skills over at Bowie. And here's a guy that fought against the United States government over border patrol that would run into the campus right along the border there, and always use an excuse to go mess with the students. And here's a guy that went and sued sued the government and won a decision. Amazing stuff. And yet we look at UTEP and we can't get a president that's representative of the culture of the community. Why is that? Why don't you answer him, Aldo?
Well, I think it's sort of a complex answer to that. One of the aspects of this situation that has been largely ignored in this particular instance is that a Trump supporter was installed as president of the University of Texas at El Paso, which, like you mentioned earlier, this is a predominantly Mexican American university in a predominantly Mexican American city. And for the sake of those who might be unfamiliar with the trajectory of Heather Wilson's illustrious political career, I'd just like to remind everyone that immediately prior to her arrival in El Paso in the spring of 2019, Wilson was loyally serving in a cabinet level position in the Trump administration. And so I think in this particular situation, I don't think it was an accident. I don't think it was neutral. I know that the um, installation process was highly irregular, but I also think that she was put in this position to promote conservative political view in an area of Texas that's critical for the Republicans to maintain control of the state, because I think the demographics are definitely not on their side, and they realize that sooner or later, if they don't do something here quick, they are going to lose control, political control of Texas. And so, like I said, I've always drawn attention to the fact that in a city, that is predominantly Mexican American, we have the worst possible scenario. You and I were discussing this earlier. We have a Trump supporter, of all people, installed in a very important position in our community.
Yeah, that I mean, when it first happened, I mean, it was brought up, but like anything else from that chapter of the world at that time, it didn't stick, And let's put it this way, okay? For all its flaws and situations and all that, the university itself, I mean, it's a wondrous campus now. It's got a lot of different types of amenities for the students, and like any other college, they push the athletics and even in athletics, I think what we're talking about, this not understanding the culture where there are not more Hispanic surnamed players, playing on the
Right.
team versus the rest of the team. I mean, it is something that for whatever reason, it's that half step up mentality about, well, we're not worried about you because we're at a higher plateau than you guys. We just want you guys to follow. What do you think, Dr. Martinez?
Well, just to follow up on what Aldo was saying, the appointment of Heather Wilson was extremely controversial, and it was a shock to people on campus, the students as well as the faculty, and it was a shock to the community. And I go into detail in my op-ed about the reaction of the people here in El Paso to that appointment. Now, why was it controversial? Well, a number of reasons. One is that she didn't have the experience, she didn't have the training, she didn't have the expertise to become president of Research One University, a big university like this one. Her experience had been in higher education, her experience had been limited to running a very small technical college in South Dakota. And we suspect that she got that position having had no experience in university administration. All of a sudden, she gets this position in that university because of her political connections. And so she was there for 40 years. And they, even though some people on the board that ran that university had doubts about her lack of experience, nevertheless, because she had been in Congress for a number of years, they felt that she could help that university due to her connections in the state, in the defense department, and also connections with defense industries. Then she was there for 4 years, and then she was appointed to be Secretary of the Air Force during the Trump administration, and she was in that position for only 2 years. And she had problems with people in the Department of Defense. I mean, some real tensions between her and people in the Department of Defense, and also she had tensions with Trump himself. And according to articles that I read, Trump was about to fire her, and so she needed to find another job before she got fired. And so, having had that experience with South Dakota State and having connections, political connections with Republicans in Texas and Republicans here in El Paso, especially Woody Hunt and Paul Foster. Um, I mean, she knew these people for years. Woody Hunt contributed to her campaigns in New Mexico, and so therefore, um, when Diana Natalicio was asked to resign after being in that position for an incredible 31 years, that never should have happened to let her stay in that position for so long. But anyway, she saw a great opportunity to come to El Paso and use her political connections locally and in Austin. And so she was wired into the position because Hunt and Foster and Dee Margo, who was a mayor, and other business people were put on the search committee, and they stacked the search committee with these people. And so they just went through the motions. The search committee accepted applications from other scholars, but they the most influential people on the committee, and the fact that people like Hunt and Foster had been regents themselves, regents of the University of Texas system, and had contributed money, lots of money, to people like Governor Abbott. uh, they had all the connections and all the power to install whoever they wanted to, and they wanted to install Heather Wilson, and that's how she became president of the university. And we were unable to learn who other applicants were, including Hispanic applicants or Mexican American applicants that may have applied. They didn't share that information with us. It was a secret search. Um, and so, because of all that, a lot of people were very unhappy with the whole process. And then they started looking, students started looking into her voting record and found out that she was very anti LGBTQ plus people, kind of a homophobe. And also, she had not been supportive while she was in Congress. She had not been supportive of the of interest of minority students, including Mexican American students. She had voted for some bills that would have helped minority students. In addition to that, she had a very controversial record as a consultant when she was not in Congress and when she was not working as in the Department of the Air Force. She was doing consulting, had her own little business operation, and she was identified as one of the most corrupt people in the U.S. Congress. She had a very, very sketchy record, and all those things came out when she was named the sole finalist back in 2019. And so a lot of protests broke out on campus, and a lot of people in the community wrote letters and spoke out and said, "Look, you have to. She has to withdraw her candidacy. We can't allow this to happen." And of course, the community doesn't have the power to do anything. The power rests with the regents in Austin, and so they went ahead and named the person that these local businessmen wanted, and that's how Heather Wilson became president of this university.
You know, it amazes me, Doctor Martinez, that you bring up the name of DeMargo, and DeMargo, before what you were discussing, was the guy that brought us Cabrera to the El Paso Independent School District, who wasn't even qualified to be the superintendent, and they allowed him to go back to school to get credits or something, instead of giving us the best of the best. You know, and look where that ended up. Cabrera's gone. There was corruption. There was all kinds of stuff, and yet DeMarco still puts his finger in with, how could she be the only qualified candidate to be president of the university?
She
That
was
that
she was not qualified. She was not qualified. I mean, she didn't have any experience. She had very limited experience running a university, but she was not even qualified to run that university in South Dakota. Um, she had a PhD, and she had published her dissertation in some esoteric um, operation that's out there for publication of manuscripts that come out of dissertations. But look,
my God,
here's,
it sounds like early AI.
yeah, here's the thing: the usual pathway to becoming a university president is that you get your PhD, you're hired at the beginning level as an assistant professor in a university, then you go up the ranks. You become an associate professor if you publish enough to qualify to get that second rank. And then after that, there's a third rank, becoming a full professor. They require more publication, and they require you to have an international reputation, to be a recognized scholar. And in addition to that, they require you to do a lot of university service and also service in the community. So the process takes like 12, 15 years to make it up to that rank of full professor. And then you can become a dean. That's the usual pathway. Department head, dean, then provost or vice president, and then you can begin to jump into a university presidency. That's the usual pathway. She did nothing of that because she was not on the pathway to becoming a university president. She was a politician. She was a politician.
She
Uh,
got she got the yellow brick road by you know being who she is, of the color that always seems to trump every other color. And
well,
I'm people, I mean, I've been called a racist for saying different things, and I, I'm not much of a racist, okay? But when there's a privilege involved, based on what a group of other people that don't even have, how does DeMarco really know the whole situation of the community? I get very upset because these guys are still running our stuff, and it really is time to change. Aldo, you got anything to put in on this one?
I just wanted to circle back and just sort of follow up on something that Oscar mentioned. He referenced her congressional voting record. And one of the things that, just to kind of back up a little, one of the problems with the Heather Wilson situation is that local media outlets have, for whatever reason, given her a complete pass. As Oscar mentioned, she does have a political background. But when she came to UTEP, all political questions were off the table. And I haven't to date, I don't think of, I'm unaware of any interviews with Wilson that undertake a serious examination of her positions on a range of relevant political issues. So it's really up to us to sort of expose her congressional record. And beyond the LGBTQ issues, which are definitely important, she's serving a university in that has a lot of Mexican American students and a lot of students from Mexico, and she claims to be working on their behalf. However, her congressional voting record tells a different reality. And one little piece of her voting record that I'd like to sort of quickly just sort of bring to everybody's attention is that back in 2006, as you'll recall, there was a lot of border militia activity in New Mexico, Texas, Arizona, California.
Right.
And when we talk about these border militias, what we're really talking about are neo-Nazis. They may claim that they weren't neo-Nazis, but according to the Southern Poverty Law Center and other organizations that were monitoring their activities, these were neo-Nazis. Now, in addition to these organizations on the U.S. side attempting to monitor their activities, the Mexican government was also monitoring these border vigilantes. And at one point, they requested assistance from the United States. And Heather Wilson voted in support of an amendment, and I think it was House Resolution 5441. It was sponsored by Representative Steve King of Iowa, which he's been out of the limelight recently, but this is the guy who used to like to hang out with these sort of far right leaders in Europe. I think there are pictures of him with, prominent leaders of Europe's far right, like Geert Wilders of the Party for Freedom, Marine Le Pen of the National Front. But basically, just to sum this up, Heather Wilson voted against the United States, the federal government, providing any type of assistance to the Mexican government in monitoring these border militias. So when she claims, and we could go on and on. If we had a couple hours, we could go through and sort of nitpick her congressional record and point out that in reality, she's actually very anti-Mexican when it comes to her voting record. Now, she likes to talk about, how much, she's learning Spanish and she likes Mexican food and stuff like that, which is frankly a little bit insulting. But the reality is she's coming from an administration that is arguably the most anti-Mexican American administration in modern American history. And her congressional voting record is clearly anti-Mexican. So, but
I get your message. Okay.
This whole thing is,
yeah.
The media here in El Paso is part of the problem, unfortunately.
Well, I'm old school media, and I think this is a huge issue. I think this is another example of that goes all the way through that university, even in the athletic department, of not having head coaches with Hispanic surnames. When there was a couple of chances to do that, those chances were not acted upon, and it just goes back to that thing about maybe they just want it the way they want it, and we're never going to get in. But talking about Heather Wilson, I mean, she's got some problems right now. Her voting history and all that. But the National Foundation has suspended a grant that could have meant $160 million for El Paso's regional economy because of some incorrect statements in the proposal that UTEP put out to get that aerospace foundation money. And now they're looking at problems, and people are taking stands and stuff. The mayor defended her and the UTEP aerospace program, but the fact of the matter is that the NSF suspended the UTEP aerospace grant pending review. And all that points to the top, right? To the leadership at the top, especially since her big part of her background is science.
Well, we don't know exactly what has happened. I agree with you that the leadership of the university, and Heather Wilson in particular, bears responsibility for that. But I'm waiting to learn more about what is actually happening, and it may be that she's found responsible, and UTEP loses that grant, and that issue blows up at the university, and then Heather is in real trouble. Part of this is that the engineer who set up the aerospace center and who's been running it, and the main person who wrote up the grant, he was demoted by Heather Wilson. She took him off the directorship of the center and put it in the hands of the dean of engineering, I guess. And that can create a huge problem between the engineering faculty and Heather Wilson. So I'm just going to hold off and learn some more stuff. I do have a friend who is an engineer, and he works with UTEP on community projects. And I'm going to call him and see what he knows about this. But I expect, though, I expect that the local newspapers, for a change, are going to be doing investigative reporting to give us more information. There was a report that I didn't see. I just saw the very tail end of it in one of the news stations. It was CBS, the local CBS affiliate, had a report about this, and I did hear them talk a little bit about some of these documents that had problems. But that's all I know. But I am expecting El Paso Matters in particular to follow up, because they did write a very good initial report about this problem. So there's a lot more for us to learn. But I'm not going to jump to conclusions yet, but it does have the potential of blowing up in her face. And frankly, my hope would be that the situation would be so uncomfortable for her that she would decide to leave uh, El Paso, and that's what our committee is hoping for, that she will leave the university by next year.
Okay, let's just say that happens, okay? And here we go, and letter writing and all that kind of stuff. But how are you going to beat, and excuse me for using this word, it's my word, I'm editorializing here, the Caucasian leadership that always seems to find a way to lock us out. When they were looking for the president this last time, I talked to the Mexican American local guys, the UTEP engineers, and they have a big amount of clout because they're pretty active and they do stuff, but they said they didn't have a leg to stand on either to get a name in or find out who was on the list, like you said. We can't have that kind of non-transparency going on, so we can know what's going on, and then we'll go, okay, well, okay, now we understand why they did it. They don't even give us the opportunity to understand why they did it.
Well, that's right. And the problem is that the power rests with these people who comprise the Board of Regents of the University of Texas system, and they have all been appointed by Governor Abbott. So I assume they're all Republicans, and whoever has a connection to that body has the advantage, and the people who have the direct connection are Woody Hunt, Paul Foster, and Dee Margo, in particular, Hunt and Foster. So it doesn't. The UTEP professors don't have clout because of the way the system works. The regents will appoint a search committee. The regents will make contact with Hunt and Foster. Hunt and Foster will go and appoint or recruit people to the committee from the business sector, just like they did when Heather Wilson was brought here. Um, I I worked with about 25 Mexican American leaders beginning in 2018. We organized because we knew when Natalicio announced that she was stepping down, we thought this is a good opportunity for us to push for a Mexican American president. And so we organized, we wrote a statement, we interacted with the search committee. You know, I wrote emails to the search committee. I wrote emails to the person in the University of Texas system who was in charge of the all the administrative work or organizing and working with the search committee. Uh, and the committee, the search committee, did have representation from the UTEP faculty, from the UTEP administration, and even from students and a couple of people from the staff. But the real power rested with Hunt and Foster and Margot and the business people that they had brought to the committee. One of the things that we proposed back then was that that the committee appoint three people from the community that we suggested, and they ignored us. They ignored us. What they wound up doing is appointing one more Mexican American to the committee that is a local business person connected to these people, connected to Hunt and Foster. And so it was these conservative, very conservative business people, associates of these oligarchs, because that's what Hunt and Foster are called, oligarchs. And that's where the power rested. All Hunt and Foster had to do was pick up the phone and talk to the regents and say, look, this is who we want. So we'll go through the process and announce that there's an opening, and we'll get applications, and we'll go through the whole thing and pretend that it's a real search, but we want this person. We know this person. And it was a shocking thing because this person was totally out of the higher education community. She came out of a different career path. She was a politician with a political record. She was partisan. It was it was just terrible. And so I
So
expected,
how do you beat that, doctor?
okay, well,
Do you have to? You got to get a bunch of civil rights lawyers and have a bunch of protests and take over the president's office, and do you have to get that kind of glare in order to make changes here? Can you work within the system and have it happen correctly?
well, I think one thing we need to do is to check with lawyers to see if there's any chance of legal action based on the fact that the office of president at UTEP has never been desegregated. It continues to be segregated. And so there might be a legal aspect to this. That's one thing we need to do. But the other thing is we need to work beginning now, assuming that there will be a vacancy in the position sometime in the future, hopefully in the near future. We need to, that's what we're doing in this committee. We're educating the community. That's what we're trying to do right now. Educating the community on what the problem is and the desirability of having the possibility of getting a Mexican American in that position. When a vacancy occurs, I would hope that we would be at the stage where a lot of people in the community are aware of this issue and have decided that this is an important issue, that they're going to support this issue, and then get them to put pressure directly on the regions, and for anybody who locally who knows Foster and Hunt, to also put pressure on those people, on the local business people, and create the pressure, making this an ethnic issue, saying that there has been this discrimination for over a century and we need to desegregate that position. I mean, that would be the approach that I see.
Yeah.
I don't think
Well, I
demonstrate.
got your bumper sticker.
Yeah,
Ya basta.
yeah, but-
Ya basta, por favor.
Pues sí.
I'm going to share this with you, okay? I know you. We have a timeline on here, but I'm going to share this with you. There was a lady here, Enriquez. I don't know if you remember her. She ran the Head Start program, and she was a very strong Latina leader. And once again, this is me talking, not you guys. I asked her. I said, "How are you able to work through the government and have such a successful program?" It was the number one Head Start in America, was being run here in El Paso, Texas. And the only way you can get into Head Start is if you're bona fide poor by a level of the government in order to be able to go into that school program. That also helps the parents, by the way. And she said, "Man, I have fight after fight after fight." But she looked at me right in the face and she whispered in my ear and she said, "Abel, sometimes you have to serve a plato de chingasu to get things done. And I think we're at that point where my parents would tell me, don't fight, don't raise hell because they're just like that. Let it go, let it be. We can't do that anymore. We got a lot of stories to tell. The culture of the campus. How about the fact that I see nothing that represents the wonderful man that Ruben Salazar was, and he's a graduate of the university, an op-ed writer for the Los Angeles Times who moved people so badly that they went and sought him out at a protest and they killed him. You know, and he came from UTEP, and there's not even a dead end street with his name on it. That I think is a big sign that if you don't understand the culture of the community, you're really not going to help it that much.
Yeah, yeah.
Any last words, Aldo?
Yeah, I was just going to say that in addition to putting pressure on, the oligarchs and other elements of this problem, we also need to kind of let local media know that they need to step up now and do their job. These are legitimate news items. And for whatever reason, they are just refusing to actually vet her the way she deserves to be vetted. Okay. I think that she's had it way too easy since she got here. And that's largely due to the lack of scrutiny by the local media. Because I think the minute they start to ask her questions about, do you still support Trump? Do you recognize Biden as the legitimately elected president? Were you aware that President Trump called Mexicans rapists and criminals? And if you were, why didn't that deter you from working in the Trump administration? These are all very simple questions, right, that have not been asked. And one of the things we struggle with is, we can't get to her. We've sent her some emails, but she's not about to answer any questions. And the journalists, or whatever you want to call them, that she does grant access to, are pitching her these softballs. I mean, if you look even at the articles that are appearing on the Prospector, you got to give me a break. This is not journalism. And what we need to do, one aspect is just finding a way, and thanks to media outlets like yourself, Dialogue El Paso Dialogue, we're able to sort of disseminate this message. But it would be nice if we could put pressure on the El Paso Times, local broadcast media, El Paso Matters, to start scrutinizing Heather Wilson the way they would scrutinize anybody.
Well, I will tell you that I will be sharing all this podcast all over the place, including El Paso News Group. I don't know if you know about them. There's a guy in Florida that used to live here.
Martin Paredes.
Paredes.
Yes.
And
yeah.
You want to talk about a guy that can throw a grenade all the way from Florida and it lands over here.
I published a column on El Paso News called The Perimeter, and I've actually written extensively about Heather Wilson and other issues.
Right. So I'm a good friend of his, and we'll be using it there, and I will ship it directly to all the news outlets so they can at least look at it. But when you got kids that are coming into a starter market, even though what a place to start, man, an international border. Can you imagine? You do international stories and all that kind of stuff. And yet the local news is really where the meat and potatoes are. It's easy to say, oh, look, they're tearing down the wall or whatever. That's easy. But how about in-depth stories like what's going on here?
Right, exactly. Cover the local media market. Yes. One other thing I'll just say real quick, and this is an example that Dr. Martinez has mentioned before. Can you imagine a situation in which a historically Black college has never had an African-American president? That's essentially the situation we're dealing with at UTEP. We're over 80% Mexican-American, and yet, despite that, we've never had a Mexican-American president. And full disclosure, I'm not an alumni of UTEP. I went to the University of New Mexico, but I'm very concerned about UTEP, and it's very important to the region and to the city. And Heather Wilson's installation is an ongoing slight to the Mexican American community that really can't be tolerated for too much longer. We've got to do something. At the very least, we've got to make her time here untenable in some way.
Well, you made a very good point about historically black colleges. That's where they were. That's why they were created to be
Right.
able to get their group way
Mhm.
ahead of the curve, and look how successful they were,
Mhm.
and all the stuff. You go back to people that invented stuff, and here once again going back to, I'm sorry, I'll use it, white privilege, uh, the Tulsa Wall Street thing, and what they did to them when they saw they were being prosperous. I kind of feel in an indirect way that this is what happens here. That we need the leadership to reflect the community. You guys are working hard on it. You're to be commended, and we need to have another podcast here in a couple of weeks to see where we're at. And I will be sending this podcast to all the news outlet affiliates, see if they catch on, and let's start beating the drum, right? I mean, the
Right.
drum,
Yeah, we
the
need to
drum
activate the
is,
community,
yeah.
absolutely, and activate the student population at UTEP. And I'm very grateful that Dr. Martinez is reviving this opposition to Heather Wilson, because it seems like there were some protests initially. Once she was actually appointed, everything kind of went away, you know.
Yeah, that was
And
very
thank you,
disappointing.
Dr. Martinez, for bringing attention to this very important situation.
Hey, listen,
Yeah,
I want to thank you guys. Well, you got the last word. Go ahead, Oscar.
well, it was very disappointing that we did have protests when she was named the final, the sole finalist, and there was an opportunity to remove her from the list. But of course, we didn't have the power to do that, so she was appointed president, and then there were no more protests. After that, I tried to organize one, and there were very few people who were willing to come out to UTEP and give her an appropriate welcome, not a friendly one. So this is another problem that we have, that very few people in El Paso are willing to protest, and that we need that.
Well,
Uh,
we need them. We need the machistas to come back, right?
yeah. What's happened to the machistas?
Yeah, yeah,
I do want to mention the email address. If anybody
yeah.
listening
Please do that.
to this podcast and wants to get in touch with the committee, they can send me an email um, at info at epsocialjustice.org. Info at socialjustice.org.
And it's important to contact Dr. Martinez if you're interested. When I was younger, there was always the phrase "para la causa," things like that, and I think it's kind of been homogenized. We had National Council of La Raza that had to change its name to Unidos Us because the big corporations didn't want to give to a organization that had La Raza in their name. We need to, kind of go back to that time of at least having a civil protest and be there in numbers and be real about things. We love artists, right? We love our artists that paint. We love all this kind of stuff, and they protest for us. But really, protest is people in numbers showing up to make a point, and especially make an exclamation point.
Exactly.
Hey,
Absolutely.
I want to thank both you guys, Aldo Mena and Dr. Oscar Martinez, for coming on to Dialogue with Abel Rodriguez, the last real area for real news. I like to say that.
Absolutely.
Good.
but anyway, I want to
Thank you,
thank you
Abel.
guys, and
Thank
we're
you,
gonna
Mr.
we're gonna
Rodriguez.
invite
Thank
you
you.
on. Remember, you can share this podcast anywhere you want, and I'm gonna go ahead and I used to always leave my radio show the same way. Y'all have a good evening, and as I like to say, te guacho raza. Okay, let me get this over here. Boom. is it? Come on, it's playing, right? It's over here. Okay, we got to hit play. Come on now. You've been watching Dialogue Podcast with Abel Rodriguez. Today's guests were Aldo Mena and Dr. Martinez, and a lively discussion we had about Joyce Wilson. Please share this podcast everywhere you can, because we're working on it, and it's going to be hopefully a Mexican-American president of the University of Texas, El Paso. Y'all have a good one.